and see if that helps. Okay, phew. Yeah, sometimes when I get like emotional, I'm like, I can't think of anything. So hence you just saw that in action. So the next part that we're going to be focused on is thinking about what are the values that are most important to you. And you can find a list of those values in the field book on pages 96 and 97. So we're going to work on these first and then come back as a group. And if folks are willing to share, that would be great. And then the next exercise that we're going to do, we're going to break out some art materials. We're going to break out some crayons and markers and colored pencils. For those of you who don't feel like you're the most artistic folks, you can also use Google Images or anything else online to be able to help you kind of with your journey. But this is kind of your opportunity to be creative and kind of use whatever medium you would like to use. But we are going to start with this first two exercises here for thinking about your qualities that you bring, as well as things you would like to develop, and then also your values. So I'll give you some time to do that, and then we'll get back together as a group. Back and join as a group, and if anybody is comfortable and feeling brave to share kind of what leadership qualities you all bring to the table, that's where we will start. So anybody that would like to lead us off? You're good. The leadership qualities that you bring kind of to the table, and any ones that you would like to further develop. Thanks, Jody. And how about we'll get the microphone to you. Thank you. We're trying to get better at that. All or just some of them? You don't have to list all of them, but just some of your highlights.
So the qualities I came up with were courage.
Get better. Oh no. Get better. So I'll project. Okay, yeah. It literally says get better. So courage, persistence, confidence, passionate, empathetic, and caring. Awesome. And any that you kind of recognize that you would like to maybe develop a little bit further? Delegation. Delegation. Okay. Yeah, that's a hard one. Here. There's lots of them. I didn't pretty much that. Same. Who would like to go next? Kate.
The ones that I want to talk about are like the ones that I would like to develop further. So kind of like big picture thinking. So sometimes I can get just not tunnel vision, but if I'm working on something or I'm in a situation, just thinking about that and not maybe like longer term. And then kind of pushing myself out of my comfort zone. So I'll take some of your courage, Scotty. And I like do things that I know I'm good at. So just stepping out of that.
Thanks, Katie. Who else would like to share? Yeah, Lisa.
So I noticed a pattern with mine is they like kind of went together of like ones that I'm good at and ones I can improve with. So I'm a very like positive, genuine leader, but I could work on being more direct, kind of being clear, and like making decisions, just because I want everyone to voice their opinion. And so sometimes finding that balance, like for example, delegation was also one of mine. I either over delegate or I under delegate. I haven't found the happy medium.
Do you, so for those of you who mentioned kind of the delegation piece, is there anything that you've thought about that drives that right now?
I'm just usually of the mindset it's just easier to do it myself.
Okay.
Because I know what I need and what I want, and if I just do it, then it gets quicker than if I have to sit down and try to share my vision with someone to get so that they I can delegate some of what I what I need. So it's just kind of that, not that they can't are capable, it's just it's where they go, I'll just do it right myself.
Yeah, and I would imagine there's an element of like timeliness to that too. Like sometimes it feels like, oh, I could just get this done quicker if I do it myself and don't have to rely on somebody else. Who else would like to share?
Mine was actually kind of similar to Lisa's. I also feel that I'm gonna start with what I can develop because I also think that like that's one of my clinic goals as well, like to be more directive and clear with my thought process. I feel like I have so many thoughts in my brain at all times. And I either overshare or undershare, but I haven't figured out how much to share with like my people that are on my team and stuff like that. I think that's what I want to improve upon. The one thing I feel is a quality that is strong for me personally is my communication skills. So like related to perception checks or like validating other people's feelings or thoughts about something or like asking specific questions and figuring out like what their like kind of like active listening skills kind of. I think I'm good with those. But also maybe I'm not. I don't know. We'll see what happens this year.
Thank you. And how about from the standpoint of like with that communication, is there anything that you feel like kind of drives, you know, either like when you're hesitant to communicate or?
Definitely imposter syndrome.
Okay, imposter syndrome, anybody else experience that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Anybody in the back here? Yeah, Talika.
I'd say one of the qualities that I have is the ability to empathize. And I think that's a good leadership quality because you don't want to push your agenda only. You have to understand what the group wants and ability to understand and appreciate their challenges and their needs, and then collaborate together to work as a group. So the ability to understand everyone's perspective and challenges is something I think I have my strength as.
Awesome. Yeah, and I can see that as kind of like consensus building to kind of getting the feel for the group and seeing kind of what's important to them. Great. And how about anything that you would like to further develop? Oh, yes.
I think conflict resolution is one thing I'm really bad at.
Okay.
And time management.
Time management. Okay. Yeah. You're good. Yeah. Get a lot of those. We'll check in with Greg or Leah. Would either of you like to share?
Well, there's quite a lot here that I feel like would describe me in terms of being a leader, but one that really just sticks out to me is positivity, because I have this understanding where if you have this positive mindset, then it's easier to be able to go into something and be able to complete that goal with just a very positive outlook with how you achieve it. Because if you go into a goal just like being negative, like I don't really care, I'm not going to do this, it really doesn't, to me, at least it doesn't really accomplish as much as if you're, as opposed to being positive.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Greg, because I think the other thing that Greg is describing too is that positive and negative kind of feelings and emotions are both very contagious in groups and in teams. So it just takes one bad apple to kind of ruin the whole team. And then it just takes that one person to be positive to be able to kind of set that as a standard or kind of like the model for what you want your group to be as well. So yeah, thank you, Greg. What about from the standpoint of things that you would like to further develop?
I think mostly what I'd like to develop more is basically learning to be more calm under fire, because there have been times where even though I can keep myself pretty calm, there have been times where when I'm in like a very high stress situation where it becomes a bit more difficult to try to keep my peace of mind. So I've been working more and more on being able to be able to keep that peace of mind even when I'm faced with a very high stress situation.
That's awesome. And anything in particular that you found to be helpful for that?
Well, one of the things that I've kind of been able to train myself how to do is I've heard that just basically taking a step back for it for a few seconds kind of helps, and being able to like just be able to think of something that really makes you happy or positive also kind of drowns out the stress that ends up going into your mind at times. So yeah, stuff like that really helps kind of like eases the process of me going into a stressful situation.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else in the room like to share before we move on to talking about some of our values? Okay, well, let's kick it off with some values. So who would like to share some of their top values, and if you were able to come up with a definition that you like? All right, Michelle.
I couldn't.
Yeah, Leah, we would love to hear from you.
I'm sorry. I kept trying to unhit the mute button, but it's not working. I just want to make sure that I was doing the right exercise, the introductory exercise to your preparation for leading.
Yep, you got it.
Okay. My first one was I listened to my staff and tried to do something different to make sure that they understand their position, making sure that I have effective training. Then it is, I really enjoy teaching, and I enjoy making sure people are having fun and are having impact on whatever subject we're talking about. I make sure I have material that covers whatever topic we're going over. I give extra help if someone needs it. I need to stop taking over and let them do the work for themselves.
We were just talking about that with delegation.
Yeah, I'm real good about that. And I need to speak up when it's a problem that can be addressed, and always have documentation to present, to be making sure that I'm being diverse and making sure that they are understanding the material.
Cool. Thank you, Leah, for sharing. And so, Leah, we're going to switch over to talk about the values part of the exercise, and Michelle's going to lead us off.
So one of my core values is my family. And again, I don't know if I love the definition or where we were really going with this, but I just said it's my biggest priority in life, who I get to lead, nurture, watch grow, do life with, and share my biggest joy and love. And I feel like I kind of have my family as a filter for everything else. I also said faith. There's so many good ones. It's so hard to narrow it down. But if I was going to try to say my faith in a nutshell. It's just my belief that I'm a part of something bigger than what's here on this earth, and what I can do to honor and bless people because of that.
And one of the things that I would encourage everybody to think about too, as you are defining your values, is thinking about how you can operationalize, is kind of what we call it, kind of in behavioral terms. So a lot of people will say, you know, that they have these values of, you know, family and faith, but think about what actions that you do that kind of show that you are kind of living into those values. So as you kind of think about your own kind of exercises in these types of activities, think about, okay, how can you specifically define that? So if somebody were to say, how do you do that? Like, how do you show that that family is a value to you? And that will help you, I think, in those tough times, you know, when you might get thrown off course a little bit, to be able to say, okay, I'm going to rely on these behaviors that really demonstrate what is important to me. Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Who else would like to share kind of top values? Yes, Uma.
So I put harmony, and how I define that is like having everyone feel heard and get along. And then my other was calm, and how I define that is when there's chaos, trying to be that person who has like a sense of peace of the situation and brings things together. And then another value I had was discipline. So knowing my priorities and putting the work that needs to in order to accomplish them.
Awesome. Thank you. Who else would like to share?
The first one I chose is honesty, because most of the times when you're like working as a team, we fail to express what we felt because we might think like we might end up hurting others or something, but it must be always like be honest. So if they are wrong, if we should let them know, but in a way that we won't hurt them. So we will all get on like in a harmony and work together. And the other one is like communication. It always should be two-sided. Like even if if you're leading it, but you still have to give the the people in the group chance to talk about the stuff. So it should be always on the two-sided, not always like one-sided. And the third one is trust. Like whatever if you're working with someone, if they don't trust you, then it's not like a good teamwork, because when you trust someone, that's how like all will come together and can get the good results.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll talk a lot more about trust as we talk about kind of how good teams function and how they function well, because you'll learn that that is like literally like the foundation. And that if you don't have trust, then everything kind of topples from there, for sure. Yeah, thanks for sharing on that. Who else would like to share? Yeah, awesome.
One of mine was compassion. So I find that as being sensitive to the emotional burdens of others and how we can try and relieve that. Another top one of mine was so that you're being connected to and working alongside others where it's like a common cause or interest. And then my other top one was respect. So mutual respect, kind of like what Rami was talking about with having it be two-sided and just having mutual admiration and high regard for others and having that people that as well.
Anybody else like to share? Awesome. Thanks, Amy.
So I won't define them all because they weren't very operated.
Yeah.
But the three that I picked were justice, competence, and personal growth. And I think the most operational one was personal growth, which involved just like taking a lot of time to reflect on like my areas for growth or try to uncover
biases that I know I have and am not aware of, and then trying to improve on those things and also supporting others in doing the same for those things.
Yeah, and I would imagine that at the place that you all are at in your careers and in your family lives, that there's not a lot of time to be able to sit and reflect and actually think deeply, about some of these things. And so that's what we hope, having this opportunity to kind of dig into some of this stuff that maybe you haven't thought about before in a deep way, or if you have, then maybe haven't revisited it in a while. So now for kind of a hard question, when you think about like the values that you all wrote down, and this is not a question that you have to like blurt out the answer to me, but as you think about this, do you feel like you are like living into your values right now? With the, the work that you're doing, with your community, with your family, just anything that is important to you. That I think is the biggest thing that as a, I guess, mentor that we would kind of recommend is that if you're not living into those things, then it's really hard, to kind of stay engaged and to stay kind of passionate, because it will throw you kind of off course. So just a little kind of gut check for yourself to be thinking about, because I know personal experience when I think I shared this during my True North talk, that whenever I first came here as a psychologist and I was doing the diagnostic work, and I felt like it wasn't taking advantage of my strengths, and it was kind of exposing like some of my weaknesses. And it really led to a very difficult time for me professionally, where I had to figure out, is being a psychologist what I really want to do? And then luckily I was able to learn being a psychologist can look like a lot of different things. And that would be what I would say for you all as well, is if you feel like you're in that spot kind of in your career development where you're like, I don't know, like, I don't know if this is for me, to be able to think about like what it could be and like what are the options out there within the field that you're pursuing, or if you're not in the field that you're, if you're not pursuing the field that you're really interested in, is there something else, that would be a better fit where you would be able to use your strengths and kind of capitalize on your values and what's most important to you. Okay, little soapbox, personal experience kind of came into play there. Anybody else would like to share their values before we move on to the next section where you guys can get crafty? Okay, so for the next section, and Greg and Leah, I'll put you back into the breakout rooms and you guys can work on this. Unfortunately, I can't magically send you markers or crayons or pencils, but you also could use any other resources that you have with the computer and images and that sort of thing. So what we're going to be doing next is the life story exercise. I will get this before the year is over. Okay, so on page 12 of your True North field book, there is an exercise that is called your life story, and that's what we're going to be working through together. There are pieces of paper that you can use for your own life story, and there's also markers and crayons or pencils that you can use. For some of you who may have already done the activity, you can color it in and make it real fancy. In just transparency, we don't expect you all to share